Hi there, and here we have another one of these. Seem to have got a few of these just lately. Hope this comes out since I'm trying the new spot. So yeah, what I have to show this time is a knife I've just actually, it's the, I suppose the one I've actually just finished in completion. Now this is a knife that started its life about 2 years ago. Sorry, I keep looking at it, I should be looking at yourselves. And just from an idea I've had for a lot of years, I've played around with the bushcraft, woodlore, more all those type of things for a long time. It's an amalgamation of two of probably my favourite knives. One, I have to say, until I actually started doing my own blades, is one I'd only seen pictures of, but I just liked the look of it. You could tell by the look of it, it was going to be very useful. And the other one is obviously the woodlore, the Ramirez designed woodlore, probably the most copied bushcraft knife out there. So yep, here we are. Now I've actually got it out of the sheath here. I'll pop it in to start. Boom. And here we have the knife. Now my leatherwork is as standard, part friction fit, part wet moulded sheath. Hopefully it's just starting to show. And here we have what I call my Woosk. Now I'm sure there's something out there and somebody will be telling me that they've seen something like this out there and all. There's nothing new under the sun, and I've actually explained where the design elements came from, and that is the fact that the woodlore, this Coke bottle handle, I call it the woodlore. I mean, he didn't, Ray or Alan Wood didn't invent it. It's been around a long time, but it's bringing those elements together at the end of the day that makes something that's useful and working. And this is probably my favourite handle for anything. It just fits and it works. Although, as I have said in another, I think it was my previous video, I don't make them as angular as some. And I know it's a certain element of, oh, it's the knife maker's art, but I'm not making art. I'm making a tool to be used that hopefully is good as art, rather than making a piece of art that somebody's going to use in the bush. So I want to make sure that it's very usable. However, I do like the skookum blade. And although I have put a bit more of a drop point on, a little bit of a drop point on this, because I just find that lends itself to a lot more tasks than a flat back. It's the element of the sweep of the blade, and like I say, so I've got basically the woodlore handle, but with not quite as angular and quite rounded. This is a 3mm with black G10 liners and mosaic pins. 26-degree bevel, but as you can see, the sweep starts at the bottom, goes all the way up, as Morse Kohansky says he likes it. But like I said, that little bit of a drop point just does allow you to things like whether you're into hunting and you've got an animal to deal with, or whether you're peeling off bark or anything like that, then that does much more allow that to slide without catching. So there's all those different design elements and they come together. Now this actually started about 2 years ago, and I believe I showed this knife on a video. Well, this is a much more recent sheath, that's not one I did then, but this was a knife I made, and it was the first knife I made on the road of doing this, and that was the original one I made about 2 years ago. And like I say, there is a video I've got on there. I showed it, I did a couple of day camp, and I tried the figure of 8 grip, a bit more of the curves and a bit more belly. But what I found was it was just too much belly. You almost ended up with like wanting to use 2 knives. So that's why I went back to the single sweep going up, but with the drop. I found the drop worked very nicely. I wasn't keen on this. I found that it did give a very good grip if you were doing any of the power grips, any big cuttings, you know, when you're cutting each side, things like that. Gave a very good grip. Also choking down, this sort of grip when you're splitting things. As soon as I'd done those two, basically, I didn't like the fact it got fatter at the bottom. And this has been used by myself and a couple of my friends, both for hunting and things like that. And the actual agreement when it came back was the belly was very good for slicing meat, but it then didn't seem to, it wasn't as comfortable to use the meat part, the main part here. So what's turned out is that's still enough belly to do everything you want. The drop allows you, like I say, to use what the drop point is for, whether that's removing bark and things like that, or whether you're removing skin on game. But this was too much, it came down too far, and rather than sliding it tended to push up and dig, whereas this one slides in and cuts. So this cuts much better, because at the end of the day that's what you need on a blade. with the blade, it doesn't matter how sharp the blade is, if the blade doesn't move and you're just pushing, it doesn't cut. However, I mean, I've even put a line in my hand there. However, if I were to move that up and down, even a couple of millimetres, that would have cut my skin. And that's the whole point of that, is that as it slides, whatever you're cutting slides up a little bit. But the grip at the front, I just found, just allowed for much more varied grips and holds and cuts. And so this is basically how I finished. Now I'm doing this one in, this is the 3mm, as is. I've currently got a 4mm on the go. I've got a 4mm with a tapered tang, and then the rest of the fitments are the same. I also have one I've been testing for quite a while now, because I quite like the lighter version, because if I go out I tend to have a parang or an axe or a saw and things like that. And this is one that's now been on my belt for quite a few weeks. And I think I've shown this one already, but as you can see, it very much follows the very similar lines, but made in 2mm, stabilised walnut, mosaic pin, and black G10 liners. I'm also testing a new dangler, and there's nothing new about the dangler. It's a 3-popper dangler, so it can be removed, so however you use it. However, I've actually swapped to 2.5mm leather. And the reason for that is I was watching a video on a chap and he was making Nordic knives, and he basically strung his with a thin piece of leather. Then I thought, oh. And then when I watched him actually in the bush and he was using it, of course, just like chucking it down. What I found, it moved a lot easier, which is the whole point. Now, since I've swapped to the 2.5mm and I've been wearing this a lot, I mean, because I work from home, I've lived in it for quite a while. Well, quite a while. I've actually lived in it for about the last 3 or 4 weeks. And what I've noticed is this thong is getting softer and softer and softer, whereas the 3.5mm doesn't tend to do that. It will soften a little over a long period of time, but this is actually softened to the point whereby the whole thing has become very movable. Also, what I can actually do is I can actually just tuck that, I can have the dangle on my belt, I can tuck the knife into my back pocket if I'm out walking the dogs and I don't want anything hanging around. I can also drop that down, and I don't even have to take the belt loop off because it's not particularly thick. Oh, it's already in there. I thought it wasn't fastened in. Oh. Because it's not particularly thick, I can actually just drop that down and leave it at the back, and I don't have to take it off if I'm not using it. I can actually just leave it on there for when I want it. However, there is no way that 2.5mm leather is going to rip or break. And that's the whole point. I've had this on and off every day. I come in for lunch, comes off, go out, put it back on, off, on, off, on, off, on, off. And all it has done has actually become softer and more comfortable. So anyway, that's a little bit of a design thing. Always got my mind open on my designs and things like that and what I'm doing. So I hope that was reasonably interesting on a couple of points of where this particular knife has got to and from. There we go. It's on my belt and very comfortable. So yeah, there we have the Woosk. Well, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you on the flip side.